What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been following along, this is our super cheap turbo Civic build. We picked it up a few months back for $500. Once we got the car home, we started on the manual swap and then proceeded to build the cheapest possible turbo kit that we could put together. The car is now on Honda and has been running flawlessly, but ever since we picked this thing up, the struts have been completely smoked, which I will show you guys here in a few minutes. But that presented the perfect opportunity to try out some budget options at getting this thing to sit a little bit lower. So let's get through the intro and jump right into today's video. Now that we've gotten through the intro, I want to show you guys just how bad these struts actually are by bouncing the car a couple times, and then we will take a look at the parts that we're going to be installing today. So as you guys can see, when I bounce this thing, it has got a ton of play in it. Both sides are pretty equally as bad. This one's actually a little bit worse than the other one, and this thing just bounces. When you're going down the road and you hit a bump, you can feel the whole front of the car doing this. The rear ones are a little bit stiffer, but we're still gonna go ahead and do all four corners and see if we can make this thing a little bit lower and preferably not quite as bouncy. So now that you guys have seen just how bad the struts actually are, let's take a look at the parts that we're going to be using in today's video. So as you can see on the left here, we have a set of front shocks for the car. We did not buy the loaded strut assemblies, and I will show you why in just a second. But the front ones, the driver's side is definitely leaking, so I figured go ahead and replace them as a set. These are from Rock Auto. They are the FCP Auto brand, and they were like $18, so super cheap, keeping with the theme of this car. This whole build has been as cheap as functionally possible. So we've got two of those for the front, and then to go with those, we have a set of DNA motoring coilover sleeves. Now personally, I've never used these before. I've always used either true coilovers or nothing, so I'm very curious to see how these work out. There are a couple things that I want to mention about this kit before we get started. So first thing is, on the sleeves they actually have a number, so we're going to do what we can to try to make that face out so that when we need to adjust the height of the car, we have a nice easy guide to show us that we have each corner at the same. Now one other thing I did notice with this kit is that it does have two different thicknesses of springs. I'm assuming one is for front, one is for rear. We're going to be using the thicker or stiffer springs in the front since there's a lot more weight on the front of this car. But other than that, it actually looks to be a pretty decent kit. Again, super cheap on Amazon. They were like $50, and it should come with just about everything we need. But I will show you guys exactly how we get them installed on our struts when we get to that point, if we need to modify anything or make anything work. So let's get the car up in the air and start taking it apart. So really quick, before we put this thing up in the air and start ripping it apart, I want to take a couple quick measurements just to see where it sits now. So in the rear, at the center of the wheel, in the rear wheel well, we've got 26 inches to the fender. Up in the front here, we're going to do the same thing. We'll measure from the ground, center of the wheel. We've got about 24 inches, almost on the dot. And then I also want to measure up here at the front bumper quick, just out of my curiosity. So if we measure right to that front little lip there, we've got almost 8.5 inches on the dot. So now that we've got a good frame of reference where the car sits now, we'll go ahead and get this thing jacked up. We're going to do one corner at a time, so if we run into any issues, we don't have the whole car ripped apart. So let's get it up on stands. Now that the car is up in the air, obviously first thing we need to do is get the wheel out of here. So we'll take a 19 mil socket and go ahead and zap this off. Get this right out of our way for now. Now that we got the wheel out of the way, we can start working on getting the strut out of here. First two things we're gonna do is there's a 14mm bolt right here that this fork uses to clamp onto the strut. We're gonna get that out of there and then come down here and get this 17mm nut and bolt out, and then we will work our way up from there. we're lucky, that'll pop right out. Just like so. Now I'm going to try to get the fork loose from the strut. Which ours actually basically fell off, so that's awesome. Usually these things will fight you. So we can get our fork right out of here. Just like so. Now we can hop up top and undo the two 14mm nuts to take the strut out. Now we can take off the two top 15mm nuts and this strut should drop right down. Just like so. We've got two different style spring compressors here. I've got this style and then this big jaw style. Sadly, neither one will fit in between the coils on our strut here that we need to disassemble. So I'm cutting the arms down on this, the little grabbers that grab the spring, I'm cutting those down so that they will fit between this coil, because I don't use this one unless it's a tight space like this. So we're gonna go ahead and just customize that a little bit and keep these ones, because these are the ones that we use more often. So I've got one left to cut, and then hopefully we can disassemble the stock strut.
Looking back at this while I'm editing, that was a very dumb spot to stand on my part. Anytime you're working with a coil spring, be very careful because they do pack a lot of energy, which you will see here in just a second.
There you go. Careful. Yeah, watch the back one, that's all.
That's what I was worried about.
Barely on here, that's the one that let go. Nice.
Oh yeah, shot.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Oh, totally. So I ended up changing my mind and decided that we're gonna go through and do the two fronts at the same time and the two rears at the same time. So we're gonna pull the wheel off and then repeat the same process that we just did on the other side, get this one apart, and then we'll put the front together.
There.
There it goes, yeah. Now that we've got the old struts off the car, I gathered up all the parts to put one together so that I can walk you guys through it and show you exactly how we're gonna do it. So we've obviously got our coilover sleeve and spring, our new shock, and then some miscellaneous hardware. The kit comes with 3 sets of 4 O-rings, each set being a different thickness. I'll show you exactly how we're gonna use these and where we're gonna put them when we go to put this one together. It also comes with these set screws. Once again, I'll show you where those go in just a second. But from the old shock, we did have to scavenge a couple parts. We're going to be using this top mount or cup, and then we also want this tapered washer that it was on the stock strut, because this is going to sit on this little tapered lip right here so that it keeps everything together and from going straight through that strut cup into the hood. So we've got pretty much everything we need laid out right here in front of us. So let's get this coil sleeve opened up and start putting this one together. Let's go ahead and get our sleeve opened up. So this is how our new sleeves and springs are going to come right out of the package. We've got our top mount with a little poly or plastic bushing. Then you've got your coil spring, and then we've got the sleeve itself with the two adjusters right here, as well as another plastic or poly bushing so that the spring can turn on it if it needs to. Now, as you can see, currently the numbers are upside down. If we mounted it on the car this way, the numbers would be upside down. And I would like to flip it so when you look through, you can see the numbers, but we have a problem with doing that. So I'll get this turned down a little bit. As you can see, there's 3 holes going around the sleeve itself, and they're threaded, and those are for these little set screws to help us center the sleeve on the new shock. So sadly, I can't flip this thing over like I wanted to because the set screws will be in the wrong location, so we're kind of just going to have to deal with the numbers being upside down. Grand scheme of things, not really a big deal. So now that we've gone through all the parts, let's go ahead and start putting one of these together. Before we can start assembly, there is one thing that we need to modify in this kit to make it work for us. So this is our top mount that goes on top of the spring like I showed you before, and it needs to go onto our shock rod here. So as you can see, when we go to put this on, it's actually the wrong diameter. So we measured this, and we're going to use a 25/64 drill bit. Get the center of this drilled out a little bit so that we can put this tapered washer on and then have this top mount go right down to it. So let's get this drilled out so that we can get these assembled. We've got our top mount drilled and deburred. Now we can go ahead and test fit it. And it slides right down to that washer just like it should. So now we can go ahead and start on assembly. First thing that I'm gonna do is take this plastic or poly bushing here and put a little bit of glue on this side of it so that it sticks to our top mount. So if it gets sloppy in there, it doesn't fall around and get off center and get crushed or anything like that. So we're just gonna take a little bit of glue and throw it on there. And then what I'm going to do is take our spring and set it on there just to hold some pressure on it till it dries. While that's tacking up, we can start assembling our sleeve onto the new shock. Now we're going to be using the 2 thicker O-rings. I'm going to use the medium thickness one first, and we're going to put it about halfway down the new shock, maybe a little over halfway, somewhere right about in there. Then we can take our sleeve. Remember the set screw holes facing down, so the numbers in our case are going to be upside down. It's going to slide over it just like that. And then also keep in mind where your numbers are facing. In our case, I know our strut goes like this, so I'm going to put those numbers facing out so that we have a decent chance at seeing them. Something kind of like that. And then I'm going to use the thicker of the 3 O-rings, and I'm going to put it right into the top of that sleeve. It's too thick for the sleeve to slide over in our case, but it does fit nicely if you pack it down around the top lip. I'm gonna use a little screwdriver we have sitting here and just pack that down a little bit. And that's gonna act to keep this sleeve a little bit tighter on the shock and help keep it a little bit more centered. So now we can grab our set screws and start putting those in. And as you can tell, they have a little point on them to help them bite in. Now once you get all 3 of the set screws started, we can go ahead and start tightening them up. We're going to want to try to keep it snug all the way around or tighten them at the same time so that this thing doesn't get off center on us. So I'm just going to go around and tighten them up about a turn or so at a time each. so that we can try to keep this thing as centered as possible. Once you get the set screws set the best you can and get this thing as straight as you can on the shock, it's not going to be perfect, but get it as close as you can. I'm going to go ahead and set where we're going to be starting off at, so the 35 mark, and then we can always adjust height from there. I'm not even going to lock them up with the wrenches right now. I'm going to wait, set the car down, get all 4 done, and check height, and if we need to, we can go around and adjust, and then we will snug those up. So now that we've got that taken care of, we can grab our spring. Once again, they do give you 2 different thickness springs or different strength springs. We're using the thicker or stronger spring in the front, and we're going to save the smaller springs for the rear. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on. Then we can grab our tapered washer that came off of the stock setup. I'm going to put that on. Then the top mount that we're going to be using that we drilled out. Now we can grab our actual strut cup or the top mount that mounts it to the car. I'm going to put that on. The washer. And then the nut. Now in our case, we're gonna need an Allen wrench that fits inside that nut for the shock, and then a 16mm wrench, and we'll get that tightened down real quick. Go ahead and make sure we've got that snug down. Just like so. And now this one's good to go, and we can bring it back out to the car. And like I said, we will adjust our final height once we get all 4 of them on, set the car down, and see how it rides. Now, I know there's a big gap here, so we are going to lose some shock travel, but that's just part of using these coilover sleeves. This will compress down on the car so that it sits like so, and that's how much travel we will have. So let's head out to the car and get this one installed. Now that we're back over at the car, first thing I'm going to do is put the fork back on. We'll just get that in there. Now that we got the fork in there, we're going to bring our new strut assembly in. Get the 2 top nuts started. Now we can grab our 14mm bolt, and I'm going to get the fork on the shock. Now it's got a little nub that you need to line up with the bolt in the back, as well as a little nub that slides into the fork to help you line it up. Just like so. I'm gonna get that bolt in and started. Now we can grab our 17. As you guys seen, we just got the driver's side thrown on, so now we can go ahead and repeat the same process on the other side, get it off, get that one built, and throw that one back on.
Oh yeah, you lowered it too much.
Hell yeah. Oh, she's definitely lower. First thing we're going to do is pull the rear wheel off. The wheel right out of our way. Now that we're under the car, we can start getting our rear strut out of here. Looks like someone might have been under here at one point. This lower strut bolt doesn't look factory, but not a big deal. We've got to get it out anyways. We're also going to break this bolt loose. Well, that sucked. So as you guys seen, that bolt broke on me, so I've got the whole control arm off, and I even tried putting this thing in the press. I have a 20-ton, so 40,000 pound press, trying to press that old bolt out of there. Thing didn't even budge. So we've got it in the little drill press. We're gonna try to drill it out real quick and hopefully start putting this thing back together. All right guys, so we're on the other side now. I'm gonna do this side a little bit differently. I'm gonna try to undo this strut bolt and then the inner control arm bolt and try to bring it down that way to get the strut out. So hopefully we don't have to mess with this one and risk breaking this one off as well. That's what I should have done on the other side, but I didn't think that bolt was going to break on us. So, all right, let's go ahead and get the strut out. Now to get to the two top bolts for the struts, we've got to take our speaker cover trim off here. There's two screws, one right here, one right here. And then this whole piece just unclips just like that. And ours already has aftermarket speakers in it, which I don't know who wired them, but there's plenty of extra wire on them. So I'm just gonna let ours hang down like this. Now once you get the speaker out of the way, down in there, there are two top bolts for the strut. We need the two outer ones. Now that we finally got that strut out, we can break it down and put our coilover sleeves on. As you guys just seen, we got the rears broken down. These are a little bit different than the front shocks were. These have like a pocket or a step right here. So we might have a little bit of an issue because when we put our coilover sleeve in, we're only gonna have that much adjustment. So what I think we're gonna do is I'm gonna go in here and cut right along this. We'll still leave some on there for that sleeve to sit on just in case it shifts or moves or anything. But I still need to get this out of the way. Not sure if that's what's recommended, but that's how we're gonna do it. So I'm just gonna get the die grinder cut right around this so that the sleeve sits down there and we can still get those adjustments. As you guys seen last night, we cut the lower spring perches off of our factory rear shocks. If you guys are gonna do this, be very careful. Don't cut into the body of the shock, just cut through the spring mount itself. Now that we got that done, our sleeve fits on there how it should. I also went ahead and gave them a quick spray paint job. They came out pretty good and they look decent. We could have left this and put the spring on it like so, and then had our sleeves upside down in here, but I didn't want to do it that way, so we just decided to cut them off. But same as the front, now we've got to go through and drill the hole on the top hats so that they slide over it, and we can start putting this thing together. So we'll set this off to the side, let that dry a few minutes while we start putting our sleeves together. I'm just gonna run through this one real quick. It's pretty much gonna be the same installation as we just did on the front one. If there's anything different, I'll stop the video and show you guys. So let's go ahead, get this one thrown together so we can get it on the car. Got this one back together. It looks good. Let's bring it out to the car and install it. So I was finally able to get that broken bolt out, and I picked up a new sleeve at the local hardware store. Worked out pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the inner control arm bolt back in, and we'll let this thing hang until we get the struts over here and ready to go on. Now we can put the control arm back in. I used the special grease that we have for poly bushings, and I'm gonna use a bunch of anti-seize on every bolt in the back. So let's go ahead and get this thing slid in there where it belongs. We're just gonna leave it like that until we get the struts in so that we can get everything lined up. So we'll feed the shock up from the bottom and then get our nuts started up top. We can go ahead and tighten everything up. Let's do the other side. So this is our last one. It's gonna go together just like all the other ones. So let's go ahead and slam this one together. We've got our last one together. Let's go throw it on the car so we can set it down and see how it looks. Well, I just noticed our first issue with this thing being this low. We're gonna have issues with the control arm hitting the exhaust. So I'm gonna go ahead and raise this up a little bit, and we'll still set it down and see how the other side looks as low as we have it right now. But I think we're gonna have to lift it up quite a bit to clear the exhaust for now. We're gonna try 45 on this corner and see if it works for us. Try that. I'm only gonna throw 2 lug nuts on it for now, on each side, so that if we have to pull them back off to go up higher, we can easily. Let's set this thing down. Definitely a lot lower. Let's go ahead and take some measurements. As you guys can see, this thing is basically sitting on the ground now. We're gonna take some quick measurements just so you guys can see how low it can actually get compared to how it was before. But I think we're actually gonna raise it up a decent little bit if we can. So we'll just take some quick measurements here. This one's right about 22. Front is about 22 1/4, and then the front lip here got about 7, a little under 7 inches. So I'm gonna go ahead, jack this thing back up quick. We're gonna raise it up because my exhaust is still hitting that control arm, and this thing's just too low right now. So we'll see what we can get it at for a decent ride height. All right, guys, so we decided to go up with the ride height just a little bit. This is where we decided on. It is 23 inches to the fender, front and rear, and it worked out pretty good. We've got the coilover sleeves set at 50, front and back, and it leveled the car right out. Even our measurements come out pretty much spot on level, so I was impressed to see that. But now for the part that I am most curious about, I want to see how this thing rides. So let's fire it up, take it for a ride, and see how it does. Let's fire this thing up. All right, let's let's go take this thing for a little ride and see how it rides. Sorry for any wind noise. It's pretty warm out today, so I've got the windows open. Hopefully you guys can hear me all right. I'm gonna hop right on the highway with it and see how it does. I also welded up a motor mount, so now we have solid mounts, and that could add some vibration, but we'll see. Definitely stiffer than it was, that's for sure. And you can definitely tell with my solid motor mount I made, this thing drives way better. No movement in the shifter from the engine jumping around. Handled those turns perfect. Definitely a lot stiffer than it was though. Of course the road's wet now, but it actually feels pretty good in a corner. Chuck it a little bit. Actually feels really good, guys. I don't know if I'd take something like this setup to like a track or anything like that, but for daily driving and just having fun driving around, it actually seems to be doing really good. I'm really happy with it so far, and it feels great. A million times better than it did before, so really happy to see that. But let's go on and head back to the house, give it a once over, and make sure everything's good. So we just took this thing for a ride, and I have to say that I am extremely impressed with how this thing drives. I'm not sure if it's because our front struts were completely blown out before, but this thing rides way better than it ever has. And for some $50 coilover sleeves from Amazon, I am extremely impressed. Is it the proper way to do it? Probably not. You should probably get some actual coilovers, but for the super cheap Civic, it worked out perfectly. Now we've got to track down some super cheap wheels for the super cheap Civic. But as always, I appreciate you guys for checking out today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and check us out on all of our other social media platforms: Facebook, TikTok, and Bought to Build Official on Instagram. And we will catch you on the next one.